Eleanor Whitfield had more money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes, but she would have traded every dollar of it to see her daughter smile the way she used to, before the divorce, before the silence settled into their home like a permanent houseguest nobody invited. She sat across from Mia in the back seat of the town car, watching her 26-year-old daughter stare out the rain-streaked window with the hollow expression of someone who had stopped expecting good things to happen. Mia had agreed to the blind date only because Eleanor had asked 3 times and because, as Mia put it, at least a bad date gives me something new to be sad about. Eleanor had laughed at that. It was the first real laugh she'd had in months. The restaurant was called Sable, one of those places in downtown Chicago where the lighting was deliberately dim and the menu had no prices because if you had to ask, you probably shouldn't be there. Eleanor had chosen it. She'd also arranged the date, calling in a favor from her old college friend whose nephew was supposedly charming, successful, and emotionally available. 3 qualities, Eleanor thought, that were harder to find together than people realized. She wasn't staying for dinner. She'd made that clear to Mia. She would walk her in, say hello, and disappear. The last thing her daughter needed was her mother hovering over a first date like a well-dressed storm cloud. But the moment they stepped inside, something shifted. The maitre d' was leading them toward the reserved table when Eleanor noticed the commotion near the hostess stand. Not loud, more like the quiet, suffocating kind of trouble that people try to handle without making a scene. A man, maybe mid-30s, was standing with a little girl pressed against his leg. The girl couldn't have been older than 5. She had 2 uneven pigtails and a red coat with a missing button, and she was clutching a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ears had gone flat. The man was speaking in a low, strained voice to the hostess. Eleanor caught fragments. Babysitter cancelled. I know it's not a great situation. I just need 5 minutes to make a call. His face was the specific kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad night, it comes from a long stretch of hard ones stacked on top of each other. The hostess, polished and sympathetic but firm, was explaining that the restaurant had a policy. The reservation would be held for only 15 minutes. Eleanor stopped walking. Mia turned back. Mom. Eleanor was already doing the math in her head, not the financial kind, the human kind. The man was clearly supposed to be meeting someone. His shirt was pressed, his shoes were clean, but his eyes were the eyes of a person barely keeping the plates spinning. The little girl looked up at her father with complete trust, which was somehow the most heartbreaking part of all. Go find your table, Eleanor said to Mia. I'll be there in a moment. Mom, you said you weren't staying. I'm not. She handed Mia her clutch. Go. She walked toward the hostess stand. The man didn't notice her at first. He was crouched down to his daughter's level, whispering something that made the little girl nod very seriously, the way children do when they're trying to be brave for someone they love. Excuse me, Eleanor said. He stood up. Brown eyes. A jawline that looked like it had been clenched for about 6 months straight. Sorry, we're not in the way, are we? You're not in the way at all. Eleanor looked at the hostess. Is the party this gentleman was meeting still here? The hostess checked her screen. The reservation was for 2, and the other guest is seated. Eleanor turned back to the man. What's your name? He blinked. Daniel. Daniel. Rourke. Mr. Rourke, I'm Eleanor Whitfield. She said it without performance, just information. I'd like to propose something, and you're completely free to say no. My daughter is sitting at a table for 2 for a blind date that, between you and me, she didn't particularly want to go on. I was supposed to leave, but I find I don't want to. She glanced down at the little girl, who was now studying Eleanor with the frank, unfiltered curiosity of someone who had not yet learned to pretend. What's your name, sweetheart? Rosie, the girl said. My rabbit's name is Gerald. Gerald is a wonderful name for a rabbit. Eleanor looked back at Daniel. Here is what I'm proposing. You go meet whoever you're meeting. Rosie and I will sit at a table, have some dinner, and I'll personally speak to the chef about getting whatever she wants. You won't have to rush. You won't have to worry. She'll be 12 feet away from you the whole time. Daniel stared at her. You're serious. I'm almost always serious. It's a character flaw. I can't let a stranger. You can check my identification. You can have the maitre d' watch us the entire time. You can leave your phone number with every member of staff. She said it gently, not to overwhelm him but to dismantle every reasonable objection before it could take hold. I raised a daughter on my own for 4 years while running a company. I am extraordinarily qualified to sit with a 5-year-old for an hour. Rosie tugged her father's sleeve. Daddy, she has pretty earrings. Something in Daniel's face broke open just slightly, that involuntary softening that happens when your child says something that makes a decision for you. He exhaled. He looked at Eleanor the way people look at something they can't quite categorize. 1 hour, he said finally. 90 minutes, tops. Take 2 hours, Eleanor said. Gerald and I will manage. They took a table near the window, close enough to Daniel's table that he could glance over every few minutes, which he did, and every time, Eleanor gave him a small nod that said everything is fine, pay attention to your date. By the 3rd time, he stopped looking quite so panicked. Rosie ordered macaroni and cheese and explained at length why Gerald preferred not to eat in public. Eleanor listened with the full and genuine attention she normally reserved for board meetings. She asked follow-up questions. She learned that Rosie was in kindergarten, that her favorite color was the kind of purple that's almost pink, that her mother had gone to heaven 8 months ago, and that her dad cried sometimes when he thought Rosie was asleep, but Rosie always knew. Eleanor did not cry at the table. She waited until she excused herself to the restroom. When she came back, Rosie had fallen asleep in the upholstered chair, Gerald tucked under her chin. Eleanor sat quietly and looked out at the rain-blurred city and thought about all the ways a person could spend a Thursday night, and how she couldn't imagine any of them mattering more than this one. Daniel appeared at her elbow an hour and 40 minutes later. He looked lighter. Not fixed. Nobody gets fixed in an hour and 40 minutes, but lighter. She asleep? He whispered. About 20 minutes ago. She fought it hard. He looked at his daughter for a long moment. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. Eleanor stood and smoothed her jacket. How was your evening? A slow, uncertain smile crossed his face. Actually pretty good. Good. She picked up her bag. That's the whole point. She found Mia still at the table, the blind date long gone, nursing a glass of wine and reading something on her phone. Mia looked up. So, Mia said, how was your dinner? Eleanor sat down, across from her daughter and felt something loosen in her chest, some old knot she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. It was exactly what I needed, she said. And for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, Mia smiled first.